kissing Sheva. She was beautiful in a way that only Kahar had ever been to him. She looked like to kiss her was to die, screaming. His lips tingled hungrily at the thought. "Who are you?"
"You've killed who knows how many to get here. Bathed in how much blood? And that's your first question?"
Yes. They said nothing for long, uncomfortable minutes. Blink, breathe, nothing else. The gauntlet was affecting him. His animal nature was suppressing his ability to think. She was beautiful. Well, not just beautiful. She looked like the odd-shaped piece of him that was missing. Sheva started to take a step. "Sheva?"
"Yes. My name is Sheva."
"What are you?"
"Perfection,"
she said without flair or arrogance. She stated a fact as simple as heat is hot, and she was. Sheva's height, a warrior's build, the same large slanted eyes as his mother, black as ink's shadow but lit from within, littered with purple metallic flakes that whispered to him in a language only his soul understood. Covered in a rainbow of scales, hot fire pink, fuchsia, and plum. Horns like the head of a blacksmith's hammer, too black to shine even in the light of 1,000 candles. She was draped in white gossamer so thin she might as well have been naked. Her boots were made entirely of human teeth and finger bones. A medallion with a jewel the size of a saucer hung from her off-the-hip belt. Tanzanite. It changed color every couple of degrees. People standing in the same room would see completely different colors. Tanzanite was the best stone for storing kinetic energy. The elves called it Angel Stone. It was perfect armor. Sheva started to step again, ready to get this over with. As if she could feel his intention, she spoke.
"So eager. You must be a passionate and terrible lover."
She smiled as though she had found the key to a treasure chest. Her lips, heart-shaped, full and inviting. Sheva's face went blank for a fraction of a second, barely noticeable. Barely. He recovered and made no attempt to hide his emotion. He was saddened. The only person he had ever made love to sacrificed their love for Fumishan. It hurt. It always hurt. It always would. "I can't figure out if you're trying to save yourself or trying to get into my head."
"Maybe I'm just inviting you to my bed,"
she said, blinking her eyes slowly, intently. It was a ploy, but to sell it she would, without hesitation, lay with him and likely show him things a faithful lover never could. Sheva shrugged. "I'm not tired."
"We wouldn't sleep."
Sheva could only swallow.
"Do you know what we are?"
"No."
"We are perfect castings from a flawed mold."
"You presume much." She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. There was a war going on inside her. Sheva decided he would wait to see which side won.
"I searched for you, you know."
"No," Sheva said.
"I was told of you by Saber."
Sheva said nothing for a while. "Saber is dead," he said with mock confidence.
"I fixed him."
"I turned him inside out." She smirked something sexy.
"I didn't say it was easy."
Sheva was enthralled. His loins were distracting him. Nothing excited him like power except possibly breaking something powerful. Somewhere in the back of his mind he was aware that the gauntlet was affecting him, but it was a child's whisper in a storm. There was something between them, a connection he couldn't define, or explain, or ignore. "Why are you terrorizing these people? You can do whatever you want, go wherever you want, take whatever you want. Why waste time in this frozen hole of a country?"
Fumishan is impossible to find. Whoever hid it well. After wasting years of my life, I decided you were a myth, didn't exist. This is where I was, and I just kinda stayed,
she answered with a shrug. Sheva looked at her with something halfway between sympathy and suspicion. She had likely lived a life very similar to his own. Likely, he thought. You know what I am? He asked.
A puzzle, like me. No womb, no night of passion between strangers. No, you are a creation. Elfcraft, if I had to guess. Somebody somewhere plucked you from the earth, hammered and purified you, and turned you into a living weapon. Just like me,
she said, adjusting herself so that her breasts swayed ever so slightly. Sheva felt a pang of guilt for wanting to kill her. They were two sides of the same coin. Maybe in some distant corner of the world, she was a queen, saving her people from a fate the rest of the world was wholly ignorant to. I am Chimera, created by the Emerald Mistress and her acolytes to save my homeland from a war like no other. I was born a dragon, and like all dragons, I could not remain a slave. I accomplished my mission, fulfilled my purpose, and now I'm free. This world is mine. There will be peace. There will be order. Will you have to die first?
Maybe.
Sheva said nothing.
How was your childhood?
She asked. Over too soon, he said.
Same. How stands your heart?
Empty, he said.
Same. Did you love her?
She asked. The question kicked Sheva's chest in. Was it a guess? How did she know there was a her? What was her game? Roru cleared his throat, reminding Sheva he was in the room. Sheva couldn't believe he had forgotten. Bindlin as well. Nothing existed but the ravishing creature in front of him.
Did you love her?
She repeated. With all of me.
So, the mighty warrior, heartbroken and spurned, wanders the world searching for meaning.
Her tone was light, but not mocking.
There is no meaning. We are here. Someday we won't be. Until then, we do what we can, suffer what we must, and take what pleasures we find. Maybe you are the temperance I need, and I am the challenge you seek.
Can we kill this bitch already? Bindlin seemed exasperated. Sheva had forgotten he was in the room again. There was a boom, then he was sailing backwards through the air. He bounced off the wall, hit the ground, and lay still. Perfectly still. Sheva stood, mouth agape, stun-locked. Sheva stood where Bindlin was a moment before, still frozen in the punch that launched his friend across the room. Roru looked at Bindlin, concerned. Concern turned swiftly to rage. He twitched. Sheva moved. Sheva vanished. Roru flew from his feet, twisting and turning in ways no humanoid body was meant to. He pulled out of his spin at the last moment and landed on his feet. His hands flew to his chest. He looked up, terrified, then collapsed in an unnatural heap. Sheva didn't get there in time to save his friend. He got there just in time for her to grab him by the throat. It seemed like an hour later when the boom from the impact finally reached his ears. No one was this fast. No thing was this fast. What are you? Sheva ground out. Sheva's lethal visage relaxed.
I am bored.
She let him go. He wanted to kill her, to reach inside her and pull out her guts. He didn't, he couldn't, and he didn't understand why.
They live,
she said placidly.
Killing them would hardly put me in your good graces.
She wanted something from him, he realized. Why do you care about my graces? She didn't speak for many long moments.
How long do you think we will live? 100 years? 1,000 years?
How old are you? Sheva asked.
I never bothered to count. I have watched mountains become rivers and those rivers run dry.
You're lonely.
Desperately. Do you know what it is to know days, years, centuries, and to know they mean nothing? Love will fade, lovers will die, and you will remain smaller, colder.
She turned away, folding her arms over her chest. A breeze that he couldn't feel waved her dressing somberly. I knew love. It died. I found purpose beyond my creation. Why can't you? He whispered, taking a tiny step toward her.
I don't crave purpose. I crave passion. I want to love and be loved, to notice the sunset again, to find more than momentary pleasure atop some grunting fool who will think me his because we swapped fluids. I want to be alive again.
There was fire in her words. Sheva moved forward, reaching. Was she? Could they be? She spun to him. His hand touched her cheek, her scales flared beneath his touch, as if dragons could blush. She nuzzled her face into his hand as they closed in on each other. She whispered his name lovingly.
Sheva.
Yes, he whispered back, hungrily.
How have you lived this long, being this stupid?
She punched him in the gut, a blow that lifted him off his feet. As he came to the height of his climb, she hammered him back down to the floor hard enough to bounce, then kicked his bouncing body across the room. Sheva curled into a ball, protecting his injured ribs. He could feel the cracks in the bones with every shallow breath. Through his pain, he could hear the click-clack of her tooth and bone boots as she approached. He struggled to get back to his feet, but just uncurling sent a firestorm up his side.
I had hoped you would be more,
she said, taking his grimacing face in her hands.
But don't worry, brave warrior, king of all Fumishan,
she said with a chuckle.
You will have purpose. You will serve me.
She kissed him deep on his trembling lips. His pain melted away. The floor fell out from beneath him and the walls went up in a puff of smoke. All white. His vision returned some time later. He found himself on a beach, waves lapping the shore, licking his naked toes. He was in Fumishan. It didn't matter that he had never seen this place before. The land of his birth felt like home, in a way no words could ever define. He wore no shirt and short pants. The weather was in that perfect window where the world was summer in the morning, yet autumn by sunset. Golden sand stretched left and right to the crown mountains that ring the continent, snow-capped year-round because of their great height. A giggling too pure to be real turned his head back to the sea. Sheva, wearing a smile so innocent, ascended from the waves. It made his pulse quicken just to see her. She wore just enough to cover her femininity, wet white fabric clinging to her shapely, muscular form. As she rose out of the waves, his breath caught in his throat. She carried 2 children, one in each arm, exuding an infectious glee that brought moisture to his eyes. He could see in their faces, in their spirit, these were his children, his and hers. A lifetime exploded in his head, 1,000 years of memories with his loving wife ever by his side. He remembered the tower in Allengard where they first met, how she convinced him to give her a chance to prove she could be more than her creators intended. He remembered the weeks they spent alone in that magical place, eating fruit from a tree that never went barren as she showed him all the wonders of the place she called home.
This is my favorite room,
she said. It's beautiful, Sheva replied. She looked at him curiously.
Beautiful. Is that all?
Now it was his turn to look puzzled.
These stones, do you know what they are?
She asked, referring to the mosaic work of jewels that covered the room.
These thousands of pieces of polished glass are not beautiful. The dwarves didn't haul them up here for vanity, though the faces on the wall might make you doubt that.
Sheva noted again the images of great dwarves long turned to dust by now, finally realizing that while the room was covered in jewels, they were made from sand tables. He looked again, truly looking this time at the room he was standing in.
Do you see it?
She asked hopefully. There is something there, but I can't place it. Like a name whispered in a dream.
This,
she said, indicating the entire room,
is one stone. You would call it a chimera stone. That's why the pieces fit so perfectly together. They were once a single great jewel, the same as the one that created you.
Warning bells rang powerfully in his head then. With this you could create an army, he said. She moved closer to him, pressing her breast against his chest, her forehead to his, peering deep into his multicolored eyes.
Not an army, a family.
His mind swirled from that memory, leaping 100 years through time. He landed on this very beach, but the sand was a worrying shade of orange. The waves, once so blue, polluted by more blood than the fields to the south, now appeared a sickly brown, only showing red when the sun pierced the waves as they broke. Chimera lay broken around him, a fleet of fleets blanketing the horizon, ships large enough to carry an army each. 10,000 were already sunken, their crews face down in the surf. A finger touched his, climbing across his palm, seeking, taking his hand. It was her, his loving wife, broken and bleeding and standing by his side. Her hard eyes and pleading smile filled him with hope, the fuel he would burn to save his homeland. She was his rock, his salvation, his life source. A wall of pink clouds swept him away, dropping him in Fumadal's horn. The council chamber was filled with friends. Gala, Mim, Garrison, even Patience was there. He remembered that feeling when his clanmates embraced his lady love, their faces beaming with pride, joy radiating from them in waves. So pleased that he had finally found someone to share the years and hopefully centuries with. They took her as one of their own immediately. He loved the way she looked in his colors, draped in blue and white, covered in cyan-colored jewels, his nation's flag emblazoned on the hem of her every garment. He could live in that moment forever. He remembered the thousands of hours spent in his mother's library, searching for the spell that brought them into being. Countless tomes and scrolls combed through with obsessive scrutiny. Kahar, the former love of his life, gave them not only the means to achieve their goal, but her blessing, which meant more to him than any collection of words could express. The war won, Fumashan was the center of commerce for the known world. It was time to start a family. He remembered that first attempt. So much pain. They created life, but it wasn't stable. A brief flash of pain and madness before returning to the ether. For all their efforts, they had only sorrow to show for it. The second attempt was better, but not the offspring they had dreamed of. Then came Alvera, Sheva's firstborn, a son to inherit the world and carry on his name. Sheva didn't remember this time as a moment or an event. It was a physical thing that a label hung easily on. It was the feeling he had when heaven's light kissed him, only it didn't fade. There was nothing left for him in this world but to hold his wife and watch their son grow. This was fulfillment. His daughter, Satara, was a surprise. Crafted in secret as a gift for him, he welcomed her with all his heart. Life was perfect. Swirls of blue and gold embraced him, piercing him, filling his soul with an ecstasy his flesh could never know, as unseen currents carried him down the river of dreams. He landed on a throne, his throne, tall and golden, trimmed in platinum and pearl, every surface bearing his mother's face, beneath the symbol of his house and his family. His wife stood before him in all his royal court, her dragon scale armor filthy with the blood of her enemies. Her handmaidens unfurled a map that detailed the whole world, a thing too large for any room but that one. Sheva touched an area of the map which turned cyan blue under her finger, and the room exploded in celebration.
I claim this land in your name, in your honor, my lord, my king, my Sheva,
she said, and kneeled before her husband. As the room bowed before his glory and her magnificence, she flashed him a look that he knew well but not often, as the campaign kept her away weeks at a time. The slivers of purple in her dark globular eyes lit a fire in him that they would spend the next week bathing in. Year after year, while his children grew, the world shrank. Conquest after conquest, expansion to the west, the north, they were perpetually at war, spreading his glory to every corner of the earth, and his devoted wife, always there, leading the charge. He remembered his son marching off to war, his wife promising to return him an equal to his sire. He remembered Alvera's platinum hair and broad shoulders. He had his mother's horns, but his scales favored his father. Deep emerald green, so green as to appear black in certain light. He could still feel the pride of that day, and his heart was happy. Years became decades, and every day his kingdom grew. Every day his name reached new ears. Every day more souls kneeled before his flag. Soon, there was nothing but cyan on that map. There was no place that did not know the name Sheva, Fumishan, or the face of his blade, Sheva, the destroyer of worlds. He opened his eyes. Sheva still held his face, cupped delicately in her strong hands. He was back in the frozen north in a stolen tower, and he could still feel the thousands upon thousands of kisses she had laid on his lips over their long, happy life together. The pain in his body was gone. His friend and his charge lay in a heap across the room, but he couldn't bring himself to care.
My lord, my king, my Sheva, make me your wife, and I will make you king of all the world, just as you desire,
she whispered, painfully seductive. Her voice cut through him without resistance, a sword made of love sharpened by hate. Her words, a dagger crafted from a halo and just as beautiful to behold.